Hello friends, I'm FIDE instructor Atul Dahale and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm back with yet another endgame video for you, and this time the topic is obviously the pawn endgame, and in that also we are going to learn very important thing, that is the key squares. Yes, what is really the key squares, why it is so important, and everything we are going to learn, and we are going to see plenty of questions in this video. So guys, stay there till the end because we are going to learn about many different positions in this only one video. So I hope that you will be there with me till the end, and without further delay we are starting this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you are new here. So what is really the key square? Well, before we go towards the key square, I want to tell you that in the previous video related to the pawn endgame, we have learned about the opposition, correct? And we understood that taking the opposition is very important in order to execute our plan of action in the position and also to achieve the desired result also. So in this position, if you can see that white wants to queen the pawn, but we know this thing that the king is just in front of the pawn in two squares, and it is very easy for black to draw the game, correct? And if you have any doubts about this, how to draw this game, I will recommend you to do and go watch the video which I have given in the above thing and I section, and learn about how to draw the game when you are pawn down. So here it's quite obvious that it should be a draw. Okay, black just needs to play something like this and taking the opposition will be helpful. But why is he stopping this move? Why is he not allowing white's king to come up? That is also very important, and we need to understand this thing, what really happens. So that's why I want to show you the next position, and it is related to the key squares. Okay, so the key squares are something like this. To understand what is the key square, the first thing is like if you occupy that squares, okay, those squares, then you can guarantee that you are going to queen the pawn, or you are going to promote the pawn to a queening square. That is the definition of key square. Very simple. I'll repeat it once again. If you occupy those squares for the in front of the pawn, okay, I'm going to show you those squares, don't worry. And if you occupy those squares, then you are guaranteed that you are going to queen the pawn no matter who is on the move. So in this position the pawn is on d2. Okay, so how to understand where are the key squares for this pawn? If you occupy that square, then you can queen the pawn. Okay, so to understand any squeeze square, remember this thing, that we need to leave one rank in front of the file or the pawn. Okay, and then we should consider only three important squares. These three important squares are our key squares. For the pawns which are below the fourth rank, we know this thing that board is divided in halfway. 1, 2, 3, 4 ranks are like the first half, you can say, and the second one is 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the ranks above. So if the pawn is below the fourth rank, on the fourth rank, the key squares will always be 3 for each and every pawn. Let's suppose the pawn is on b3, then what are you going to do is like if the pawn is on b3, we will leave one rank in front of the pawn and we will be considering only this 3 square. Those key squares means those squares are the key squares for the pawn. Okay, fair enough. Now what is there? If you occupy that square, then what really happens? Well, as this pawn is here, king is here, whoever it is move, let's suppose it is white's move, and white needs to push forward, right? And if you just keep on playing the king, then opponent will just take the opposition, and we cannot really do that thing. And we know this thing that we need to push forward. For this pawn, we are already on a key square, correct? Okay, this is the thing. So before we go further, I want to show you something else also which is very important, that is the next position. So this is the position, and we know this thing that from the previous diagram, the key squares are here, and in order to go there we need to first play this move. Okay, now our opponent, it might move to the left or right side, wherever it is going to move, we are going to place our king on that square. So let's suppose he plays this move, our king will arrive on one of the key square, and now we need to follow this process until we reach to the desired position. That we need to follow this process means what? We need to always occupy the key square before pushing the pawn. Okay, fair enough. So black might play something like this, and we arrive at the position which was there in our previous discussion. And but in this position, the difference is that black is on the move. Okay, so this time black might play here, and okay, I can play this move, but I want to push my pawn, right? So what I will do, I will go to the other side. This is called as the outflanking, you can say, that we will not be taking the opposition, because taking the opposition is not good for us. We want to push the pawn. That's why we played king to this square c5, because we want to push the pawn here or here, wherever. So in the position, like let's suppose in this position, if you push the pawn, what really happens? I'll tell you that this will be a big blunder, because our opponent will take the opposition by playing king d6, and no matter what you do in this position, you cannot really make any progress, because the moment you push the pawn, we arrive at the position which is a drawn position, correct? So that's why before, for the pawn on d3, means before you push the pawn to d3, the key squares for this pawn are here, e5, d5 and c5. First of all, we should occupy at least one of the key square, and then only we should push the pawn. So d3 is a mistake. Okay, first we'll play king c5, occupy the key square for the pawn which is going to come on the d3 square. He might play this move, and now okay, we can play this move, but I will always recommend you to first of all push your opponent as much as possible towards, like, not to allow him on the same file of the pawn. Okay, so I'll play this move, he might play this, and we'll come here, and now it's possible for us to just push the pawn, because for the pawn on d4, as we know that the key squares are there on c6, d6 and e6. By this time I hope that you must have understood where are the key squares for the pawn, because we are going to leave one rank, and after that only we are going to calculate the key square. So he must go behind, and okay, until the 4th rank we know that there were only 3 squares, but the moment the pawn is going to be pushed to the 5th rank or the 6th rank or something like this, then the key squares will be doubled. Okay, so now in this position already we know that we are on the key square, fair enough. Okay, but once the pawn is going to be pushed on the 5th rank, it is not a bad move, because for this pawn the key square are not only here, because we can say like he will play here and the key squares will be like this, but also the key squares are here, that is on c6, d6 and e6, as well as on e7, d7 and c7. Means when the pawn is on the 5th rank or the 6th rank, there will be 6 number of squares which will be key squares for us. Key squares means what? Occupation of that square will guarantee you that you are going to win the game. So he might play this move, something okay, we will play this, and he will play. So one more thing I want to tell you, that we can obviously push the pawn because our king is on the key square, but there is also one more important thing which you should remember, that whenever you are going to push the pawn to the 7th rank, it should come without the check. If the pawn is coming on the 7th rank and if you are giving the check to your opponent, then game will be drawn. Okay, so if you play d6, okay, it will be a mistake, because your opponent will play king e8 and take the position. And now if you play d7 now if you play d7 in this position, then after king d8 you have to be in touch with the pawn, and if you play king d6 if you play king d6 in this position, then the game will be drawn, and if you leave the pawn, then the pawn will be lost, so that will be a drawn. So remember this thing, that before pushing the pawn, always understand that if the pawn is going to be coming on the 7th rank, it should come without the check, then only you can queen the pawn. So first of all we should play this thing, push him away from the in front of the pawn. We don't want him in front of our pawn. Okay, so he might go to king e8 or king c8. We'll take the opposite side, and now we are controlling the queening square, and we'll just push the pawn and we will queen the pawn in that case. Fair enough, it is just easy. Okay, there is no confusion about this thing. I hope so you understood this thing, and it's quite easy. Okay, fair enough. So this was the main thing. We'll be looking at one more position for you, and we'll see what happens in that case. So the pawn is already advanced in this game, and as we already looked at the situation, if black is on the move, okay, he might play this move, and playing your pawn push will be okay in this position, because if he plays this move, the pawn is coming on the 7th rank without the check, and that's why we are going to queen the pawn. Okay, on the next move we are going to queen the pawn. This is what we should understand. Means, as I said, like, even if your opponent is on the move, even if he is taking the opposition, in that situation it will still be winning for you. Okay, I hope you got this thing. And coming back to the position which was the first position, in this position we know this thing, that now even if you play the kings, it is not going to help you. But if you have understood the techniques which we have learnt earlier, then we can play d3 move, forcing our opponent to go to the left or right side of the pawn, and wherever it goes we will be going to the other side and we will be taking control of the key square. And I hope that you know that how to win in this position once we take the control of the key square. But just for the sake of clarity, I'll show it once again. Here we will go to the other side and now we will push the pawn, because for this pawn the key squares are here. We are already on the key square, then only we are pushing the pawn. Okay, or we should be at least be likely to be there on the key square. Okay, fair enough. So he might play this move. Now you can push the pawn, because for this pawn the key squares are not only 3 but there are 6 key squares and our king is already there. So you might play this move. We take the opposition, don't play the pawn. Okay, this will be a mistake because the pawn will be coming on the 7th rank without the check, and with the check, and it will be a drawn. We want to take the pawn on the 7th rank without the check, so we'll play this move, push him away, and we will control the pawn, and this is just the winning position. So I hope you understood this thing also related to the key squares. And now we will go to the important thing, and just wait a while. Okay, fine. This is the position if the pawn is there, and now we have understood something. So what white will play? White will play something like king d7, forcing the opponent to push the king away, and now we will capture the pawn. Your opponent has taken the opposition, but still this position is winning for white because of the obvious reason that we'll play king f6 or king d6, and both moves are possible. Remember this thing. I'm going to show you one more position where only one move will be good. Okay, so he might play this move, and now we will be pushing the pawn because our pawn will be coming on the 7th rank without the check, and it is just the winning position for us. Okay, I hope you got this thing also, because this position was winning for you only because this pawn is on the 5th rank and the key squares are 6 key squares. Okay, the next position, another interesting thing, this one, the knight's pawn. Well, what happens with the knight's pawn? Knight pawn has one very interesting idea which I want to show you, that we have to play king to the rook's file. Now you might ask me that why to play that side. Okay, for that reason we will first understand that what happens if you play king to c6 square. Well, here white has a very nice move, that is king to a7 square, and now if you push the pawn check, then he has this interesting move or the best move in the position, that is king a8. And if you play check, then pawn is coming on the 7th rank with the check, and that is not we want, because our opponent's king will come in front of the pawn, and in order to save the pawn we have to be there, and the game will be drawn because of the stalemate. So we cannot play this idea. But don't worry that b6 is not compulsory. We can return back to the same position and we can go to the side which I was talking about, that is the rook's file, right? So we'll play king c7, he will be forced to play king a8. Now again here if you push the pawn, the game will be drawn because of the stalemate. Okay, remember this thing. And if you want to win, then we need to go back to the position with king b6. If you place king b8, then king a6 will be played. And now if you place king a8, even if he takes the opposition, we don't need to worry because the board is little bit short here. We can play b6, king will come here, and the pawn is coming on the 7th rank without the check, and that's why we are going to queen the pawn and we will win the game, right? Fair enough. Okay, I hope you got this thing, and we will be coming to the last thing about the key squares, and the exception is there when the pawn is on the rook's file. Well, even if you are controlling the key square for the rook pawn, the game will be drawn because there is not too much room in this position. If you are defending, then all you need to do against the rook pawn is like be there in these 6 squares and you will be draw the game. So even if you play this move, black can just keep on waiting here, and the pawn is coming on the 7th rank without the check. Still it is not winning for you because there is no side or there is no square on the left side of the pawn, and that's why it will be a draw. So I hope guys you understood all about the key squares from this video, and we will be learning many more things about the pawn endgames, about the rook endgame and several endgames. So be there on my channel, share with your friends also, and we will learn and share the knowledge with you. Till that moment, take care and goodbye.